and welcome everyone to the first eVe Award ceremony hosted by Open Austria on behalf of the Grid. We're thrilled to present the winning project in this exclusive virtual award ceremony at South by Southwest. My name is Clara Bloom. I'm head of the Open Austria Art and Tech Lab, as well as co-founder and president of the Grid, a global multi-stakeholder platform connecting artists and art institutions, technologists and tech companies, as well as policymakers around the globe in order to positively shape the future of technology.
And I'm Martin Rauchbauer. I'm the Austrian Tech Ambassador. I'm also one of the co-founders of the Grid. Clara and I will be your moderators through this ceremony, which will be full of special treats and live interaction. So stay tuned for the entire hour. We are very lucky to be able to gather today 1 year after the San Francisco lockdown to the day to host this live event in this splendid pocket stage designed by our wonderful Vienna-based friends at Paper Town. We've all been tested. This is why we sit next to each other. And together with you, we're looking forward to a brighter future. And here's our one housekeeping rule for the ceremony. Please keep your microphones muted at all times to be respectful of our guests. And don't go away after the ceremony, as we have prepared something very special for you. You will be able to join us for an exclusive meet and greet with the award winners on our online platform, Wonder. And Kylie will share the link with you in the chat.
So what is eVe? The eVe Award is a new annual award by the Grid. We celebrate collaborative artworks that push the envelope of human and artificial creativity. eVe is endowed with a prize money of $10,000. And the name of the eVe Award is inspired by a very special person that embodies everything that this award stands for. A marriage of art and tech, seamlessly woven together to power one another, reconciling contrasts and contradictions. eVe is the origin, birthing a new attitude in tech that embraces artistic experimentation and out-of-the-box thinking by taking the road less traveled.
From now on, eVe will be awarded annually and become a new industry standard for tech companies that make themselves vulnerable to the arts and embark on exciting in-house collaborations between artists and technologists. We're now honored to welcome a person who supported the Grid's vision from the very beginning. He's a true digital humanist, combining the worlds of art, technology, and policy, representing the European Union in the United States. Join us in welcoming Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis, who will now deliver the opening remarks to our first eVe Award ceremony.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Clara and Martin, both for the introduction and the work you have done to create the Grid and to make it such a success that we are here today. Who would have thought, indeed, a year ago, it would have been such a big success. Now, I am supposed to announce the names of the awardees. Am I not? I'm not going to be spoiling anything if I do so. Or will I?
You're free to do so.
I will, because I can't contain myself, frankly. I am super enthusiastic. Look, it is an honor for me to participate in this first eVe Award ceremony, celebrating the collaboration of, frankly, two inspiringly creative and innovative minds. Bryan McCann and Daniel Kehlmann, congratulations for being awarded the very first eVe Award. Now, Daniel, Bryan, your work being awarded today is an outstanding example of how art and technology can amplify the impact of each other by melding them together. And the fact that we can celebrate this marriage through a great example of transatlantic cooperation, a collaboration between an Austrian-German novelist and a US tech developer. And now that's an added bonus that I have to smile with. Now, your award-winning project builds upon a concept as old as human history. From the first cave paintings, ancient Greek myths and legends, the first photographs and modern newspapers, the evolution of storytelling has always reflected how people have found new ways to learn and to communicate. Bringing artificial intelligence into storytelling Now that truly exemplifies how AI can be a true participant in a human-to-human communication, how being digital humans can promote our basic humanity, not detract from it. Now here, AI can make inspiring suggestions, but it does not control or write the story, the narrative. Humans do. But this collaboration can simultaneously elevate storytelling to an entirely new level of imagination and beauty because of AI. I am thrilled, and I know that many people watching here will be inspired by this innovative project. Perhaps it will help more artists to come up with imaginative ways that technology can play into their own creative processes. Innovation, however, needs collaboration, and the ability to identify such collaborations, to let them grow, to let them bloom is essential. And this is what the grid does. It creates a space for this conversation. It brings together the worlds of art, policy, and technology. And it brings, frankly, together people who normally would have never met each other under any other setting, such as the EU ambassador to the United States, Jon, and some brilliant, fantastic people out there in the West Coast who are making it all happen. Open Austria and the grid, thank you so much. But this is the day for Daniel and for Bryan. This is the day to celebrate them, celebrate their project, celebrate the avenues that their project is opening for the tech and art collaboration, and celebrate the first eVe Award. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Lambrinidis, for these.
Oh, I didn't get my thingies. I'm sorry. Okay.
You mean those? We'll
Yes,
send those
I
next
mean them.
time. This is just, this is a pilot. If that works, we'll do that all the time now. So thank you so much for these inspiring opening remarks. You've been a real patron of the grid from the very beginning, and look how it has grown. It has really turned into a global endeavor to bridge the worlds of art and tech. Thank you so much. The first eVe Award is honoring AI storytelling, a collaborative art project that was initiated by the Open Austria Art and Tech Lab, but made possible through the grid's first tech partner, Salesforce. By welcoming a traditional writer into the Salesforce AI research labs in Palo Alto to work with the technologists on natural language processing, Salesforce has paved the way for unconventional models of collaboration between art and tech. Sharing his video message from San Francisco, the beating heart of the global tech industry, is Marc Benioff, co-founder, chair, and CEO of Salesforce.
Hey everyone, it's so great to be with you and to be part of this amazing event and be part of this program. And especially all of my friends, my partners with the European Union, with Open Austria and the grid. And anyone who knows me knows how much I love Austria. So I'm thrilled to join you in celebrating this outstanding work of the grid. And we're all facing so many challenges at once. I think we need the grid and events and conferences like this more than ever. A technological revolution that's transforming how we live, how we work, how we entertain ourselves. It's underway. We all know that. And the pandemic, well, it's also exposed terrible inequalities that we've had around our entire world, in healthcare, in education, in racism. And reckoning around all of these things, well, this is the new divide. We've talked a long time about the digital divide. Well, we can really see what happens when we have a pandemic divide, what happens, where countries and companies and people all look very differently. So I hope that this kind of conference and this event, well, it opens our eyes to what's possible, but also what our challenges are, what our opportunities are, where we're going, how we'll get there. Technology itself, it's never good or bad. It's what we do with it that matters. We all know that. This is a moment to think about that and to think about our lives too. How do we use our lives for good to improve the state of the world? And this is also a moment where we can also talk about art. Art connects us and inspires us. It educates us. It brings us together. It helps us to unify us. It could be physical art. It could be this amazing movement in NFTs and everything that's happening. That's just a phenomenon to me. I mean, what I just saw happen today in the NFT community is like incredible. So anyway, thank you everybody. Have a great event. Thanks so much for inviting me. I wish I was there in person. I hope I get back to Austria very, very soon. I hope that Austria will reach out to me and bring me over. I love being there, and I hope that you all have a great time. Wishing you all the best. Bye-bye.
Wow. Thank you, Marc, for your sympathy for Austria, but also for your support and passion for the arts. And also for taking us on a surprise trip through the NFT universe and what it potentially means for the world of arts. For the uninitiated, NFTs are non-fungible tokens and are all the talk of the town. And now it is time to welcome the winners of the first eVe Award.
Roll.
Welcome Daniel Kehlmann and Bryan McCann.
Woohoo!
So Daniel Kehlmann is a renowned Austrian-German novelist and playwright whose works have been widely translated into many languages. He became known in the English-speaking world with his best-selling novel, Measuring the World, in 2006. He has won several prestigious awards. In the United States, his last novel, Until, was shortlisted for the International Booker Prize and is currently being adapted as a Netflix series.
And Bryan McCann is an American philosopher and scientist of natural language. As co-founder and CTO of U.com, he's currently embarking on a new startup adventure to build a new search experience. eVe award-winning project AI Storytelling was developed at Salesforce AI Research in Palo Alto, where Bryan worked as lead research scientist on deep learning and its application to natural language processing and natural language understanding. Bryan designed a new language model called Control to give users more control over the AI text generation process.
So here's the origin story of AI storytelling. Right before the pandemic, on Valentine's Day of last year, Open Austria invited Daniel to Silicon Valley. We were curious to explore if a state-of-the-art natural language processing algorithm like Control was able to produce literature, or whether the idea was doomed to fail.
Yeah, and when we introduced Daniel and Bryan, we concocted the perfect match of art and tech. Daniel has a curious, investigative mind that constantly seeks out new challenges. And Bryan is both a scientist and philosopher by training, whose passion lies in exploring the true nature of things. The seamless flow of conversation illustrated, to our surprise, both artists and technologists were in fact sharing the same language. And here is a short clip of this first magical encounter at Valentine's Day of last year. Take it away, Kylie.
Bryan's great.
So it was a great idea to have him come here.
That's fascinating. Yeah. I want to know more about that. I got an extensive tutorial on how machine learning actually works and what it does and doesn't do.
Machine doesn't get to interact with a waterfall the way we do.
Oh, that actually makes total sense.
That's amazing.
That's incredible. Okay, well, that's weird. And it gets even weirder. This is really fascinating. Yeah, it always comes back to.
It has a sense of what it wants to do.
Yeah, it's funny.
You guys actually laughed. It wrote things that entertained you and surprised you.
Yes, you are in control with the algorithm, so it gives you suggestions and then you can change them or go back on what you wrote, and it's kind of a constant dialogue. Oh no! No, I don't want. That's actually not bad, but I don't want a giant spider in any. I don't want a giant spider.
So this is an interesting point here because you didn't like that suggestion.
Yeah.
So right
because
now,
I have actually a fear of spiders, so I don't want to engage with that. No, I could actually, of course. I'm not that neurotic, but it just didn't like the spider. You never know what it will give you. It's a mixture of extremely convincing suggestions and total surrealism. Now it's getting really interesting. I can see how this will develop in the future and how this will change writing in a major way.
There was some moment of AI helping humans create meaningful experiences. And the fact that we did that on day one is kind of a testament to the success of it already.
Well, here they were on February 14th, on Valentine's Day of 2020. But today, we'd like to use this opportunity, this incredible stage at South by Southwest, to have a little conversation with our two eVe Award winners. Almost feels like Clara and I were part of your journey, Daniel and Bryan, from the very beginning. And we both learned a lot along the way. And our upcoming questions are just a small sample of some of the thoughts that we reflected upon together over this past year. In retrospect, we see AI storytelling, for which you are receiving this award today, in reality is a journey of two people who departed from very different perspectives and explored together what it means to be creative as a human and as an algorithm. So tell me, both Daniel and Bryan, how did this collaborative process change you and the preconceptions you might have had about literature, creativity, AI, and storytelling? Daniel, would you like to start?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, among other things, it made me think deeper about the mechanisms of storytelling. So, of what is a story, what constitutes a story. Because it's very interesting, sometimes control comes up with very good suggestions. And the funny thing is, the moment when control doesn't come up with very good suggestions made me question, why did this happen? And it made me understand deeper what a story is. A story is not just made of language. A story is also made of a certain kind of dramaturgical expectation. And in a way, a storyteller is always someone who knows things you don't. And in a way, the algorithm is a perfect, or sometimes imperfect, sometimes very good simulation of that. But it made me, of course, also understand what a predictive algorithm is, or understand, according to my abilities, to understand such a thing. So that was very, very interesting for me. But it also made me understand in a much deeper way what it is I do when I try to tell a story, in real life or on paper.
Fascinating. Bryan, what's your take on this question?
Well, it's similar. This project made me think far more deeply about the technology that I was working on, coming from a background where I was always interested in language and meaning. This was in particular an experience where I got to see things that I felt like I created in some sense, actually interact with humans in a way that can bring joy, maybe surprise, inspire. And while I spent some time thinking about questions of machine consciousness, or whether they understand concepts exactly the way we do, how they might plan in the future, and assessing some of the weaknesses of the algorithm, I spent far more of the last year thinking about how the things that we create in AI and in NLP can increase kind of our awareness of social and linguistic norms, give us a better understanding of whatever it is we're doing when we tell stories, but also just generally speaking, when we use language, interact with other symbols that we're using to represent information in other parts of the world that we study, and just broadly, understand how we're creating meaning, and how we motivate kind of what we're doing and our existence, kind of in these unexpected futures, perhaps. So I was really thrilled with the moments of surprise and laughter, and that inspired me to think a lot more about what these things can do for us even now. especially in the future as we make them better.
Yeah, thank you so much for your take on this. I want to talk a little bit more about meaning in a minute, but have one follow-up question on Martin's first question. So in a sense, when we started out this experiment, we had this, I don't know, delusional idea that the algorithm would be able to create literature, which in a way, the concept of artificial creativity has been a delusion and is now more or less becoming a reality. So I want to talk about this fact that in that sense, that experiment has failed, right? So Control and Daniel and you were not able to forge a work of literature, but it still taught us a lot about what the limitations are of this algorithm, but also what the potential is. I thought it was really interesting that the majority of the press was focusing on, well, what a relief. Humans are safe. The algorithm can't do what we can do. So now we're out and we're all safe. It's okay. The machines won't take over, which is such a limited view in our reality and all the potential that we see in front of us. So again, a question for the both of you, really, this moment of relief that the algorithm can't create literature, did it give way to this new sensation of, my God, look at what it can actually do and how it can inspire me? Was there a shift in perspective?
Yeah, I was a little bit surprised by those reactions because that was never something that was very much on my mind. The fear that I would become obsolete and algorithms would write books. I mean, not that that's never going to happen, but I didn't think that would happen in my lifetime or anytime soon. So, what I was interested in was the idea to use the algorithm as a tool and to see whether there could be a true collaboration. I have written prose and also screenplays together with collaborators. So I think it's very interesting to enter with another person into this writing, into a writing process where you get a result which is really the product of the two of you working together, and you're not even sure when you're done who wrote what, and it's also not important. And I was really interested in this idea whether a similar collaboration would be possible with an algorithm. So I think that rather small-minded question of am I going to be obsolete? I mean, of course that's interesting, but that was not something that I felt like even I needed to address.
Very good. What about you, Bryan? Do you think a little differently about Control now?
Yeah, I would say that you know, when I started and joined on this project, my goal was certainly never to replace people like Daniel. That would be impossible. Daniel is a delightful and wonderful human being that I've gotten to meet. But I think what I did learn is that these models can provide kind of a new way for artists and creators to tap into something that's kind of like this vast ocean of human writing in a way that maybe wasn't previously possible. So rather than replacing writers, I actually think even if Control successfully generated a long form text or a future version of Control generated something that we would be willing to call book length, the question still remains, what are we doing with that? And how does it fit into the ways in which we are telling stories and the ways in which we are using language and literature to explore this range of possibilities that we have for kind of understanding the world and ourselves in it. So I liken it, I've developed two metaphors that I really like over the last year in understanding what I saw. One was seeing Control as, and language models more generally as giving us the first kind of sneak peek of what it might look like to manipulate this language field or something like that. Like the first moment when we could measurably interact with magnetic fields and then start to manipulate those things. And if you look at everything that happened after that we could never really have imagined, I kind of see this as something that's allowing us to tap into something that's distributed amongst all of us whatever language is. There's some in you and Daniel and me, and there's something about that the artist can access in a new way by using these language models. Maybe a less technical metaphor would be, it's almost like another sensory organ, like instead of, we can kind of see and hear what the most likely, most common patterns in language are and in storytelling are. And now we can be kind of more hyper aware and conscious of what to do with that information, and decide to do what we want in creation.
Fascinating. We have so many follow-up questions, but I'm just going to choose one and continue on your notion of language. So this is really at the heart of our work, right, Martin? We think about these questions a lot because we want to try to distill where to draw a line between human and artificial creativity, and I dare say, if there's even such a line. So language is linked to how we define our genuine humanity. It's similar to other human characteristics like consciousness, imagination, perception, thinking, judgment, memory, and even creativity and reason. So an algorithm that is capable of producing language can therefore put into question what it means to be human. However, control tree just assembles tokens by means of probability rather than creating meaning with intent. And it is a long way from incorporating artistic qualities such as style, storytelling, narrative, character development, etc., to create a genuine work of art. But then again, experimenting with control, we felt that it really taught us humans that in some way we are much more automated than we think. Like our language, the way we use it, is also heavily reliant on pre-programmed patterns of language that we often utter without premeditated intent. So a little provocative question for you, Bryan, perhaps you can start off with this. Given that AI is still in its infancy, couldn't one argue that ultimately the difference between humans and machines might end up being just another story that we tell ourselves?
It's a great question. And something that I've been thinking about too, around even just like the word machine. As soon as I seem to call something a machine, it feels like conceptually that I've kind of stripped it of intention. And sometimes, we might think of living things even as biological machines, or operating as machines or mechanically in some ways. And when I, look at my dog or something, I might, if I think about it and just frame it as, okay, this is an organism that's a biological machine, I might not see intention in what it's doing, and I'm just interpreting things and creating meaning. But I think there is a possible question of when we're willing to say that the word machine doesn't feel as appropriate anymore for things like this. Now, my expectation, in all honesty, is that as long as we are building these things from the ground up, and intellectually, at least some of us can dissect what is going into this algorithm, and essentially rebuild it in a replicable way, we'll have so much insight into how it works that we'll be okay calling it a machine. Whereas even if I, God forbid, took my dog apart and put it back together, I wouldn't know how to turn it on. There's something there that I don't understand about the creation process. Whereas with control, I could make it again. Maybe in the future we can make things that make things, and we won't understand exactly how they do it, and that will give us a little more distance between us and the machines, in a way that will actually be okay saying there might be intention there. But it is a very philosophical question there, so I'm curious to hear what Daniel thinks.
Very fascinating. So is there something, and what is this something that distinguishes machines and human beings? What's your take on this, Daniel?
I don't know. It's such a big question. I have to think of the great German philosopher Leibniz in the 17th century, who makes this distinction between living entities and not living entities, and machines which aren't alive. But how he makes this distinction is very different from what we would expect. because he says a living being is a machine that consists of other machines, in infinity. And a machine which is not alive is just some entity that consists of parts that are not a machine. And I'm not saying that's true, of course, that's a very Baroque theory, but it shows us that it's not that obvious, and that the lines between an organism and a machine, the idea that the lines are so clear and easy to understand, this is a very new idea. They didn't think that in the 17th century. They didn't think that in the 18th century. And maybe we also have to learn, as Bryan just said, that what is a machine and what is an organism, that this is in many ways more complicated, or also not as, the distinction aren't as obvious and clear as we expect. And that's always interesting for me as a writer, to go where distinctions are not clear, where things become ambivalent. And but of course, there's not a good answer to your question. I can just agree with you and say that is a very good question to ask.
And so one last question to the two of you. So since that Valentine's Day of 2020, AI, natural language processing, has moved on a little bit. GPT-3 by OpenAI was released afterwards. So Bryan, what do you think is the near future? What does natural language processing and its further developments hold in for us? And what do you expect, and what do you hope that AI might soon be able to achieve?
I am very much looking forward to AI that has some understanding of language, even if it feels in some sense to me like an ungrounded understanding of language right now with GPT-2, GPT-3, algorithms like control, and trying to ground that kind of statistical, just predict the next word mentality in other modalities like computer vision, generating and tying images and language, video with language, even embedding something like that has a starting point like GPT-3 and something that's more embodied like a robot, having it actually interact with the world, so that the words and the language that it's using is a little bit more like how we use it. So it's actually tied to things in the world. So I'm very much looking forward to more multimodal models, more multimodal AI with like a fuller sense, where they have more sense organs as well. And I'm looking forward to the innovation that will come almost entirely from just better hardware and engineering underlying it. Control has kind of a fixed sized window of text that it can see, and that's mostly like a hardware and engineering problem. So as that window gets longer, I would expect it to get more convincing with longer pieces of text and longer pieces that it's writing. And the last one that I'll mention is language models applied to other languages that aren't necessarily English and German, but just sequences of symbols. So for example, treating proteins as a sequence of amino acids and treating those symbols as a language and training a language model on it, so that it similarly maybe doesn't know how to write a book in protein space, but can recombine the elements that it's seen in the real world in ways that we haven't seen, but will still be effective. So I can see that kind of broader principle applying to a lot of different fields, and I'm very excited about that.
So Daniel, very quickly to you, you are still a very young writer. Are you expecting to use AI as a literary tool in your work sometime?
Yeah, I mean, why not? We use tools all the time. So I use dictionaries. That's a kind of a tool. Using a dictionary, I look up things online. That's a tool. So why would I not use AI at some point in the future as a tool?
Spell check.
Right, spell check, right?
Exactly. Well, we are now going to hear an excerpt of Daniel Kehlmann's essay, My Algorithm and Me, which he presented recently in Stuttgart in Germany. in the Zukunftsrede, and has become quite a sensation in the German-speaking press, as we mentioned before. In this essay, Daniel reflects on his encounter with control, with Bryan, with Silicon Valley in general. In short, it is his personal account of how he sees AI storytelling. So here is my algorithm and me in the wonderful translation of Ross Benjamin. Daniel, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just read a short excerpt, or like actually a few short excerpts connected. So I'll start with my description of Bryan when I got to know him. The creator of Control is named Bryan McCann. He's personable, friendly, and it comes as no surprise, immensely intelligent. In addition to his various mathematical qualifications, Bryan has a degree in philosophy, and his favorite pastime is reading Latin texts in the original. He's also an almost fanatical admirer of Italo Calvino. The underlying database, Bryan explained to me at one of those paperless tables in Palo Alto, consisted of a vast amount of text. They were on Google, therefore didn't have scanned libraries at their disposal, but nonetheless had access to hundreds of thousands of books that were freely available online. And on top of that, they had millions and millions of online forums, including the entire ever-growing corpus of Reddit. Reddit, I asked, somewhat astonished, but isn't that somewhat, Reddit? Yes, indeed, explained Bryan, immediately understanding my unspoken objection. It had been a problem. Unless you intervened, Control quickly became racist in its responses or made the most obscene jokes. To ensure that anything at all other than base vulgarities would be produced, you had to categorically prohibit certain words and phrases. There was nothing else to be done about it. It can't be stressed often enough. Artificial intelligence is a reuser. Everything it can do depends on the activity of countless people online. The translation program has as its statistical basis an unimaginable multitude of translations available on the internet. The navigation program has as its basis all the people driving through the streets while running this very navigation program and thereby supplying it with data. Photo, facial recognition is based on millions and millions of pictures we take with our phones and upload into the cloud. And Control can tell stories with me because we human beings are constantly telling each other stories. And the results of this are deposed in ever new sediment layers online, in books, in forums, in new articles, in tweets. In the days before big data, chess computers learned the rules of chess and applied them, and facial recognition programs had to know what a mouth is, a nose, eyes, freckles, both with limited success. The revolution of deep learning took place when AlphaGo was presented with countless Go matches, and on that basis, without ever having been troubled with a Go rulebook, now began to make statistical predictions. Then the system played against itself again and again and improved at a tremendous speed, and it was only a matter of days before it beat the best Go player in the world. No one had taught Control grammar rules either, Bryan explained to me. And nonetheless, Control made no grammatical errors. But that borders on magic, I blurted out. Bryan smiled and said, well, yeah, sometimes it could seem like it. I've compared Control with a crazy person, but ultimately that was just to make a point, because the decisive factor in my interactions with the algorithm is something completely contrary to my expectations. When I've told friends about the project, I've always gotten the same reactions. On the one hand, jokes about how the machine could replace me, write my books instead of me, render my literary work superfluous, my whole profession obsolete. On the other hand, comments about the new person in my life. A British director even proposed making it into a play. A writer worked with a writing robot. The two of them fall in love, comic entanglements arise, a reverse Pygmalion scenario. While I hadn't feared such a development, I had still imagined the algorithm as a vis-a-vis, thus as conscious, or at least as an entity that would convincingly simulate consciousness. But the most astonishing thing was rather Control never struck me even for a moment as being conscious. At no instant did I have the slightest doubt that control had neither feelings, nor thoughts, nor desires. Control has no inside. There is not something it is like to be control. And yet, this too, I never doubted for an instant. Control was intelligent. But it was an odd, cold, alien intelligence, which no mutual understanding was possible in any profound sense of the word. Of course, I tried. Can we have an open discussion? I wrote, who are you? I admitted, when I wrote that, I was hoping for a miracle, a sudden awakening, an unexpected glow, a ghostly presence. Control, however, is a sum of instructions and applied statistics, and these determine the resulting responses. And so control replies to my question, and what do you want? I'm a member of the United States Secret Service, said Mr. Farnham. Well, right, never mind then. But let's take it from here. Maybe something can come of this story. So let's tell it together.
Bravo. Well, you definitely have to get this essay. It was released at CLEP, right? A couple of weeks back, and we're working on trying to get it to release in the English-speaking world. But now, brace yourselves, because you're in for a special treat. Welcoming to the stage, the one, the only, Control. So Daniel's going to proceed to share his screen, and Daniel and Bryan together will illustrate in a brief AI live performance how to co-create a meaningful storyline with an artificial intelligence. That's a first. We're just a tiny little bit nervous because we can't really control what's going to happen. Only control can. So take it away, Bryan and Daniel.
All right, does the screen sharing work? You see my screen?
We see.
Yep.
Very good, very good. That was the hardest part for me, getting the screen sharing right. So, so I spent a lot of time with control. So we'll just see what happens when I randomly start a story with, I was alone in my study when my phone rang. John told me that my aunt, oh, that's just, and why not provoke? Let's just think this is a crime novel. So John told me that my aunt had been shot, and now we see I press Control. That's how I get the result. And Control comes up with what? What happened? She shot herself with a gun she found on the floor. It's not bad. It's unexpected. I was going into a different direction because I was kind of planning to have her shot by someone. But so I go ahead with what Control's giving me. So I'll say, how strange. I said, who would have guessed that she could do such a thing? Because I actually didn't expect that. So let's turn that into part of the story. Do you think it was an accident? And now I'm really waiting. Does Control think, quote unquote, it's an accident, or what's going to happen? So we'll see. I press Control, I wait. Or did someone want to kill her? He said he didn't know. Then came another call. It was from John. That's pretty good. But it's John again. So let's see. Again, I asked, any news about my aunt? Because I'm trying to get Control back to topic. He said no. And then another call. And this time it wasn't just but one call, but several. Several. Who could it be? Let's see. All the family had started to call me. People were upset and worried. Of course, I would expect that. Also, there was a lot of talk about, I still want this crime novel, this crime story angle here. So let's say my aunt's wealth. I still want her to I still want this to be some crime. So let's see what control comes up with. My uncle called me at work and asked if I wanted to come over for dinner. So that's again kind of unexpected. So again, when it's unexpected, I like to go with this. So you haven't called me in years, I said. Now it's, but he insisted. So we went to dinner and talked about everything. So let's see. I'm not sure how much time we have for this. Should I go on a little longer or
Couple more sentences, just
yes.
so you see if he wraps up. It
Yes.
wraps up.
It doesn't quite wrap up. So that's the thing. At some point, the process stops with control. So we have to just leave it as a fragment. So I've said in my essay that control is more like Kafka than like Dickens, which is fine. So I talk about everything. You will probably get all that money, he said. But you will need help. And that's what I offer. So there's some scheme here. Okay, let's see. I'm really curious. So we sat down together and ate some good food. The conversation turned to money. Yeah, that just happened. So yeah, I'm glad we finally got to money. How much do you think it will be? Weirdly, the screen doesn't, somehow the screen sharing prevents me from scrolling down much. Does it still, can you see what I write?
Well, money is the last word we can hear, quite appropriately.
I cannot, it doesn't let me scroll down for some reason.
Seems like a natural ending point. Seems
Kind
like
of.
control wants us to wrap
All
up.
right, because my screen, it's not control's fault. It's something about the screen sharing here. My screen is kind of frozen on this one screen. But the thing is, it's at some point, control kind of freezes. So we can always do very short stories. So we would have to wrap up very soon anyway.
That was really good. Congratulations.
Always surprising what control comes up with. It's always surprising. And what's always the fun of working with control is that it pushes things in an unexpected direction. So I was clearly going for my aunt, the narrator's aunt, to have been killed, and control resisted. Control really wanted this to be a suicide, and so it went into a different direction. So this is really part of the fun of it.
Oh, this
Fantastic.
is so funny. Okay, in the interest of time, we will proceed, even though this is highly fascinating and we have so many follow-ups. But now, we're almost approaching the highlight of this virtual award ceremony. But before we proceed to hand over the award trophies, we want to welcome one more special guest. We've already introduced most of the ingredients that have made this groundbreaking artistic exploration possible: the artist, the technologist, and the algorithm. But we want to shine a light on the tech company that opened up its sacred AI research lab and encouraged this encounter to flourish. Because eVe wants to inspire other tech companies to follow suit and to introduce art thinking into research and development, so that both artists and technologists can get inspired to think differently about technology, humanity, and all the rest in between.
So welcome Eric Loeb. He is the Executive Vice President for Government Affairs at Salesforce. He has supported the grid from the beginning and provided often valuable feedback, encouragement, and the belief to think big. Eric, could you tell us what the grid means to you personally? And we dare ask, has it at all changed your perception of art and its power to shape technology?
Well, Martin and Clara, first of all, thanks so much for having me here. And it's been great to listen to Bryan and Daniel and the interaction, their observations earlier, the demonstration, see the work, and just matches the wonderful partnership that we've been having with the grid. You know, if there's a theme, a recurring theme, like goes back to our earliest conversations in 2019, which time has just flown by. It's about this point. It's about the importance of engaging and understanding different perspectives, and of reaching out beyond one's comfort zone to engage with people who have different experiences and different views. And you know, Daniel and Bryan expressed that so nicely today about their collaboration. When I think about that, and I draw it out more broadly, if ever there was a time to work on this about different viewpoints or professional skills or politics, of course, we are in that time. That need to practice this skill, to build that mental and that emotional muscle of understanding the basis of different perspectives, it's just increased. It's just increased in recent years. So coming to your question, of course, there is the tremendous substantive work products of the grid, like what we're going to celebrate in just a moment with Daniel and Bryan's in their work. It's really about the process. It's about the process of engagement that motivated our work together from the start with Open Austria and UNIC and Salesforce. And I feel that we have appreciated that benefit of bringing worlds together and increasing understanding and perspectives, artists and technologists, policymakers, and importantly, of course, transatlantic communities. So yeah, I believe our partnership with Open Austria, it is helping Salesforce to explore new ways of appreciating something that Marc talked about in his opening remarks, that human-centered and creative approach to technology. And so my point about the importance of the process, it's an evergreen one. The engagement with other perspectives, with other modes of thought and other cultures, it helps your awareness. It helps you to be very present when you consider those potential impacts of the technology that you build and that you use. And so that's my thought. It's the thought that really started with our initial conversations, and I've heard it today expressed by Bryan and Daniel, and it's great to be together in this experience with all of you.
Thank you, Eric. Very inspiring. Clearly, valuing process over outcome. This is our success formula that has been demonstrated with this project, AI Storytelling. Yes, I think this sets the stage. It is time to officially award Daniel Kehlmann and Bryan McCann with the first eVe Award trophy. This is our virtual equivalent of handing over the trophy, and perhaps just some words on the trophy itself. We wanted to create an award, a trophy that embodies the grid's ethos and truly speaks the language of our times. So Austrian 3D printing award-winning designer Julia Kerner has managed to capture just that. We're honored to present the official award trophy for eVe in this short video.
I designed the eVe Award trophy as a unique superimposition of eVe, a symbol of the human soul, and the grid, a technological structure. The design is inspired by both organic and cellular forms, blending art and technology. I utilize a novel 3D printing process which can grow geometry from liquid plant-based resin. The bioresin is made from plants, such as corn, a renewable and biodegradable resource. The color teal represents open communication and clarity of thought. The design of the award trophy is showcasing how technologies can transform our world.
Well, thank you, Julia Kerner. This is an amazing design. And now, this is the moment to show the actual trophies. Daniel and Bryan.
Please unmute yourselves for this special occasion.
Please hold them into the camera. They arrived in Berlin and in Palo Alto in good health, in good shape, for everybody to see. On behalf of the grid, congratulations to our first eVe Award winners, Daniel Kehlmann and Bryan McCann.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is a great honor and very exciting. And this is a wonderful trophy.
I love
Well,
you.
now you both have your own eVe at home.
it.
Well, something to put up the shelf.
And don't forget, stay for an exclusive meet and greet with Daniel and Bryan and our other distinguished guests, and join us on our platform after the ceremony. Our dear Kylie has shared the link in the chat function. We'd like to use the final minutes of our first eVe Award ceremony to reflect on the path forward for our ambitious multi-stakeholder initiative, The Grid. For this, Eric has asked us to reverse the roles and moderate himself this last bit of the ceremony. So go ahead, Eric. What would you like to know?
Well, great. Thank you so much. So, you know, as we conclude today's ceremony and we celebrate this honor, I'd like to look forward, and I'd be very interested to hear from both of you, from the leadership of the Open Austria team, about your vision for the future of the Grid and the eVe Award. So, Clara, would you like to take this question?
Sure. Thank you. I really appreciate this reversal of the roles to just give you a quick insight into what we're planning. So what's the Grid's vision, the one we share, and what are we trying to accomplish here? And in a way, Eric, we think of ourselves as storytellers as well. Sure, on a more pragmatic note, we're culture facilitators working in Silicon Valley, but the Grid has become so much more than that. With our steadily growing network of partners around the globe, we want to tell the story of how art powers technology by creating these magical moments where art, tech, and policy meet to help us look beyond our horizons, to expand our limitations, to grow beyond ourselves in new forms and formats, and to value process over outcome. There's so much we need to learn from one another in order to assure that technology is used for good, is accessible to everyone, and inspires us to become the best version of ourselves. Like technology itself, our vision is global, and we're working on just that.
Wonderful, Clara. Thanks so much. And Martin, a question for you. And it's such a pleasure to work together, and I'm sure that other parties would like to as well. So how can additional partners help you grow your program over the next few years?
Well, thank you so much for this question. I'm sure all the tech leaders that are watching us have this question on their mind as well. What can tech companies, what can Silicon Valley do, not only to support our initiative, The Grid, but the arts in general? You know, partners in the tech industry and in the private sector are extremely important for what we want to achieve. I think the most important thing is that people in technology, people that lead the industry, that they believe in the power of art to shape and to change frontier technologies. And then follow Salesforce's lead and open up your laboratories and let your researchers, your developers work together with artists and come together and imagine and dream and discover, just like Daniel and Bryan showed. And of course, we hope that companies again follow Salesforce's lead and live up to their responsibility for the arts. Salesforce in that was really inspiring, takes its responsibility seriously towards society as a whole, and that includes the arts. Thank you, Eric, for engaging with us on this outlook for the future and for your unwavering support. We hope that the story of Daniel and Bryan, the first winners of the now annual eVe Award, has inspired you, dear audience, to rethink the potential of art, of literature, of philosophy, of human and artificial creativity, and you will join us in our future endeavors and adventures. GetOnTheGrid.org is where you need to sign up in order to stay informed of our activities and initiatives in the future. So come and join us and spread the word.
All right, and we'll be seeing you in a bit on Wonder for an exclusive meet and greet with all our distinguished guests at today's awards ceremony. What a special treat, but before we end, We want to acknowledge everyone who has made this event a reality. So thank you very much to Ambassador Stavros Lambrinidis for joining us. Thank you to Marc Benioff, and thank you to Eric Loeb. Thank you to our award winners, Daniel Kehlmann and Bryan McCann. Also, thank you to Unique Global, who've supported the grid from the very beginning through the European Spaces of Culture program. Our fantastic colleagues and co-conspirators at Unique Silicon Valley, the EU delegation in Washington, D.C., Dockyard Creative Studios for designing the eVe Award logo, motion capture and sound design, Julia Körner for designing and producing the eVe trophy, Papertown for designing the pocket stages, and our wonderful Open Austria team. Most of all, Kylie Mebust, our communications and events manager, and of course, Jordan Schaffer, our videographer. Thank you also to South by Southwest for hosting us and making this first eVe Award ceremony a reality.
And thank you, Clara.
Thank you, Martin.
See you in a bit. Goodbye. And see you, of course, on the platform, and see you next year at the next eVe Award.